I'm Ryan, and I realized that my talk doesn't make as much sense. The title doesn't make as much sense when you're here because what you're looking at is just a keynote presentation. But don't worry, I'm not talking about how I made a keynote presentation. I'm actually talking about how we made the events, sites, and mobile app. So hopefully you guys have been using that throughout your whole process, either here or coming to Liferay. We found it's a good use case of a lot of things that Liferay provides and a lot of things we can do with Liferay. And it's just a project probably similar to projects that you are working on, going to work on, have worked on, of how to build things for your users, for your company. So I'm happy to be here, happy to share kind of our experience, hopefully give you some insights in how you can use Liferay certain ways, how you can solve problems certain ways. Everything we basically learned in the process of it and are still learning because the app is still out there and there's still people finding things wrong with it, people who like it, people who want new things. So it's always an iterative process. But my name is Ryan. I'm on the web team for Liferay. So I work on liferay.com. All of the sites that we put live, I have a part in a lot of them. There's a lot of sites and a lot of different teams that work on them. But main liferay.com, all the event stuff, all the mobile app stuff, that stuff comes through our team. And we're going to talk today about that process. So we're going to talk about some of the challenges that we faced, what the problem was, what the use case was. Then we'll talk about some of the results, so how we made solutions for those problems, and how those worked. And then last, just a few lessons that we learned, or maybe are continually learning as we've been doing this process. So we'll get started with challenges. So our challenge is we have events worldwide. So I think we have, I don't even remember how many, at least upwards of 10 or a dozen events worldwide, and they all want some sort of online presence. So they all want, whether it's just a little description on our events page, or whether it's like this event, we have a whole site for it, users come, people can sign up, people can log in, people can do all sorts of different things. They want to see the agenda. So we have a lot of different sites that we have to build and maintain. And that's a lot of work, especially for our web team, which is maybe currently dropping in numbers, but maybe around 7 or 8 people. So we really need to have a system that can manage that and allow marketers to build things without us. All issues I'm sure you guys have come across in your companies as well. So we have 2 goals in all of this. One is for you guys, the users, to be able to use our site, be able to find our site, be able to see the agenda, all of the features on the site, but also when you get to the event, be able to use the app and to have that experience be similar, to it be relatively seamless of what you see online is what you see in the mobile app, be able to, both before the event and during the event, have a seamless experience for the Liferay events. So that's the first goal. The second goal, excuse me, is for the admin. So we need our marketers to be able to manage this without the dev team. There'll always be some things that we need to do, but we can't have, or we have in the past and needed to avoid, marketers needing us to build every page, all of the content. When they want to make a copy change, we would need to do it. All of these things, we need it to be very easy to administrate and change and update events across everything. On the website, in the mobile app, anywhere else that we have anything, it needs to be easy to manage for our marketers. So those are pretty straightforward in concept, but in actuality, you all know that that is not always straightforward. So we have marketing. It always starts with marketing wants to create a new event site. So for example, they want to create the North American Symposium site. So they're going to ask us, the web team, for a site. They're going to give us their requirements. They're going to say, okay, we need you guys to build this. We'll go and talk to design. Design will also interface with marketing, and they'll make sure that everything, we know all the requirements, we understand the requirements. Then they'll mock us up a site to design. And then we interface with the mobile team, which our mobile team is in Brazil, in our office down there. And so we'll interface with them and make sure the requirements for that as well. So the web team is kind of the hub for the communication currently in our structure. And it works well in some ways. It works well when we know everything that's going on and are able to find problems and issues and help the communication there. But sometimes it can also add layers of complexity in communicating. But we need to be able to work with that structure and create everything that we need. So the process usually that we go through, as I said, we get recs, so all the requirements for the project. Then we get mocks from design. Then we develop it, so we'll create the actual sites. And then in the past, this is where kind of things went a little bit interesting in order, then we would get the refinements. So then marketing would be like, well, we actually don't like this. We want this to be here. We don't like the way this looks. So then we would go back to dev, and then mobile was just tacked on the end. Like, oh, the mobile app will just pull whatever we do. It's kind of an afterthought, right? So this process is a little bit backwards in how we've worked for a long time, but we needed to fix that to be something more like this, where we do the recs and the mocks and the refinement all before we do any development. And then when we get into development, we can simultaneously develop for mobile and desktop browser at the same time. So we're trying to move more towards that kind of solution. So the main challenges we face, and in many projects are going to face, is time, the amount of time it takes. Events are very time-based, so we need to have this page live by this time because the event is going to be over and we need to get people to register. So we need to be able to deliver quickly, and when you're doing things manually like we were before, it's very hard to do things quickly. Second one is money, just resources. We have a limited team, and it seems like marketing grows exponentially, and the dev team is like just supposed to handle it, right? So a way we need to do that is creating better processes to be able to handle that. So more resources or money. And then last is consistency. Every marketer wants kind of like the snowflake website that's exactly what they want, which is great in a lot of ways, but also it lacks, one, the maintainability, but also the consistency across sites. So you might go to one Liferay event site, and the UX is completely different than another one. And we want to avoid those things because we want the experience for our users to be similar, not the same, but similar UX-wise all the way across. So now to the results, the fun part of seeing what we built and what that looks like. So this is our site. You may have already visited it, you may have not. But yeah, we created these sites that have lots of different features. So you can have all the pages, simple Liferay site, has an agenda, but the way that we create these, as we'll see in a little bit, decentralizes some of the data before. So we also have the mobile app, which I'm sure you've been using for the agenda. It has lots of really cool features and turned out really well. There's some bugs, maybe you found them, and I'm sorry if you did, but that's a part of any software process. And yeah, our end product it turned out well, but it's not just, oh yeah, we have the product and it's good. There was a lot of steps in between and things that are useful in that process. So it'll help more if I describe what it was like before and then how it's changed. So before we had one site. So say we want to create this site. We created the site in Liferay. You create the Liferay site, and then you create all the templates for it. So all the web content templates, you put them on the page. It's basically all static content, so you're able to create those. So we have our site, we create it, we create web content templates. Marketing is able to update that. That works. In the past, we've used DDLs, so dynamic data lists, which is a built-in kind of data storage listing in Liferay, which is great, and it's flexible enough for us to use. So we didn't have to write any code. We could just use the UI there and then store all of our data there, which was great for a while when we were building one or two sites, needed to do that. We had more front-end developers, very friendly for that. But then all of a sudden, when we need to build the France site and we need to build the Spain site, we have to do all of that work again. So we have to create another site. We have to copy the templates over because they don't want the same templates. They want them to be slightly different per event. And then we need to create the dynamic data lists again. So there's a lot of rework. And then if we update the first site, it doesn't update to the other ones. So our process was a little bit broken in that sense. And then when we have 3 different sites, they all need to go to the mobile app. So the mobile app has to pull from all these different locations, and it gets a little more confusing and a little hard to manage all of that. It's just hard for consistency. And then the mobile app needs to actually do some things like ratings and notifications. So then we had to stand up another server to do that and do like the few things that are doing there. And then we had the events page that shows all our events, and that was completely detached from anything. It was just linking to our sites. So this is how we had been functioning for a while, which worked for a while, but it was not very scalable. So what we needed actually was to switch to a different method where the portlet is the center for all of the data. So and instead of storing all of the data in the sites themselves in dynamic data lists, we switched to taking the portlet and letting that be the central source of data. So you're able then to create an interface for your admin that they can add sessions, they can create new events, they can add users, they can add speakers. All of those things are done in the portlet, and then the portlet is what gives that information to all the other locations. So each event site just pulls from the portlet based on the event ID. Or the mobile app, you just point it to the portlet and it can pull all the data that it needs from the APIs we created. And the events page now can be more dynamic and pull that information. So instead of marketing needing to update the site in one place and then somewhere else, maybe it doesn't go to the mobile app or maintaining that, it's now this one central place for data, which isn't a foreign concept. It's probably good, a good design for it, but as our use case grew, we had to expand and restructure how things worked. So this is how it works now, and it has been much better, as you'll see in the future. These are some of our mock-ups. So one of the key things that we needed to do for the consistency problem was we needed to make sure that we had a consistent site all the way across. So what we had to do is audit all of our sites and all of the components that live on those sites. So anything that a marketer would want to put on an event site, we needed to standardize what that would look like. So instead of the process being our marketer in France wants a new call-out section that says, sign up for speed consulting. Instead of us just creating web content for that based on what they want it to look like or what design says, we now have a component list that design makes that defines everything and all the configurations that you can do. So our marketers were afraid that it was going to kind of limit the creativity that they could have, but in reality what we did is we understood everything that they needed and then gave them all of the options. So the first step was actually not even in development. It was going back to marketing, figuring out what they need, and then going to design and saying, we need a complete component list of everything that you can build on an event site and what it can look like. And then marketing can just choose which ones they want out of those and put them in the sections that they need. So this was a lot of the work before development, but a lot of the problems were resolved even just going back and looking at this and saying, okay, what exists on our site and how do we create that in a replicatable and clean and consistent way? So now our sites have a number of different things, so different components on each site. We built these components actually into the theme. So we have 3 different types of sites, or currently in events, we'll have 3 different types of conferences. One is a symposium, like we're at, so you can see that's the one over here. Looks like our page. We also have solutions forums, so it's mostly in Europe, we have those kind of events. And so we needed to create a completely different kind of theme for that because it's a different audience. And then we also have a DevCon each year in Europe, and they wanted their own theme as well. So they want different looks across those sites. They want them to be unique for their audience. But if you can see, there's also different things in here that are very similar in elements. So we needed to create our theme in a way that we created styles for each individual component, but then we can create a color scheme or a variation of the theme so that we can style each component differently in the different contexts. So now you can use the exact same site and you could just switch it from the different modes. All the components are styled in each way, and you're able to have all those things. This one's really long, sorry, it's fast. But yeah, so you have all 3 of these sites, but you can see these 3 components are actually the same thing. So structurally, they're the same thing. They're the same web content structure, but they are skinned and styled for this theme. So marketing can get their specific look that they want and feel for their site for that to be consistent, but they can also, we don't have to recreate that every time. We now have the same structure, and all we did is switch the theme setting, the variation, and it works. So that saved a lot of things. And you can even notice, because of portlets and dragging and dropping, the components don't need to be in the same spot every time. Like, marketing can move what they want and use the components, but we've defined you can use this or this or this. You can have a button here if you like, or it can be a CTA here. Those are configurations. So they still have flexibility, but it's more contained and consistent, which saves a lot of back and forth, as you'll see in a bit, when we have to redevelop things or they want to change things. It saves a lot of time. So talking about the portlet itself, we needed marketing to be able to edit it easily. So we created a custom portlet. We have our events admin. And so they're able to edit all of the conferences in here, all of our events. And it's a portlet that stores all the data. So it doesn't look necessarily super pretty. It's just the basic control panel styles. But they can edit all of their sessions. They can do everything that they need here. You can edit users. You can edit rooms. You can send out the announcements from here. So they have one central place that they go, and they can update all of that content. It makes it very easy for them. There's no questions of, how do I update this? Where do I go to update this? They have one location, and when they edit it here, it's going to update in the app. It's going to update on the sites. Everything that they need is centralized. And that's very helpful. So speaking of the app, we have a dev team down in Brazil that has already been working on mobile apps. So they had the experience in that. And before we had, if you've been at Liferay long enough, we had another mobile app that one of our community manager, he made on his free time, or not his free time, but he kind of hacked it together. It worked. It used the JSON web services. It was a really cool proof of concept. But of course, he leaves Liferay, and then he just gives us the app to inherit. So we have a bunch of front-end developers that are like, okay, maintain this app. Like, well, we don't know how to maintain apps. We can learn those things, but that's really expensive. So we went to our team in Brazil, and they were already thinking about wanting to build an app for the events, wanting to redo it and improve a lot of the features. So what they did is they decided to use Xamarin. So that's just, if you're unfamiliar, it's a framework that you can use to build apps, which is nice. It's written in C#. So you write all the code in C#, and then it generates an iOS and an Android app for you. So it gives you the structure, and you write one code base, and then it creates both apps for you, which is very helpful. Because even though they have an iOS developer and an Android developer, you save a lot of time when you don't have to build each feature twice. So they chose to go with this framework, which was helpful for building the app and maintaining it. But a lot of the stuff was just in Liferay. So all of the services that the app uses is from Liferay. All of the data that is stored is all in our portlet, and they get through APIs. So we're able to easily connect all of the data in the app to the live data that's on our site, and the app is just the screens and the experience pulling from there, which works very well. And they were able to use things like Liferay screens, which is kind of a set of, they call them screens, but a set of code that helps you kind of get started with building common things like login or authentication, those kind of things that you need to do that take a lot of time in an app. Liferay has built-in ways of doing that for you already, so they're using some of those features to help make the app quickly and also kind of standardize it. They also have the mobile SDK, so they're using all these features that we have in Liferay to help you build apps, to build our app. And yeah, it's worked out well. They're able to develop very quickly, which is nice, and change things quickly. Another thing that we used technology for the mobile side was Firebase. So before, if you remember the diagram, we had an external server that was doing, that we had to maintain, that was doing the notifications and ratings, sessions, live polling, all those things. So the few things that we could pull data from Liferay, but pushing data back takes more work to write. So we had an external server doing that. And the mobile team decided, instead of using that server and having to maintain it, we can use something like Firebase. So if you're unfamiliar with Firebase, Firebase is just a Google solution for, basically, you can send information to them, and they'll also send it out. So what we use it for is, from our portlet, we can send information to Firebase, and then they'll send out all the notifications to all of the mobile app users. So when you get one of the notifications on your phone, it's because our portlet told Firebase, okay, send out this notification to all of the users subscribed to this event. And then Firebase sends out all those notifications. So instead of us having to write all of that code and all those schedulers to do all of that, we were able to easily integrate with Firebase to send out all the notifications. Also, when you rate a session in the app, the mobile app sends that information to Firebase. We could also send that information to Liferay, but in the process of it, it's just simpler using a solution that's already there, easy to integrate with, and yeah, a cool proof case of how Liferay works with all these different systems, and we can easily manage all of the data. And we're looking to improve those more. Liferay has a Liferay push, if you know anything about the mobile development, which can do notifications, and we considered using that. But the way that the integration was working, it was simpler to go with Firebase at this point. And yeah, and it's worked out well. So back to our challenges. The first challenge was time. How did this work for our time? So this is a graph of the average number of days it took us to finish a ticket for events in 2017 versus 2018. So it took us almost an average of 80 days to finish a symposium ticket last year. This year, it took us, what is that number? An average of 9 days to close a ticket. And that's from like creation to completion. So a lot of that time can be like requirement gathering, figuring out what the stakeholder wants. But as you can see, us creating all of these better solutions that allow marketing to do what they need means our tickets are getting closed a lot faster. So we're saving a lot of time that we need to do spending other places on our website, not necessarily on event sites. And this means that event sites are getting up a lot faster. Instead of them waiting weeks or months to get their site up, they can get it in days, which is huge. These numbers surprised me when I was pulling them. Second one was money. So how did we save money in that? This is our sprint points. So we work agile and sprint. So a sprint point is basically just resources, how many hours. It's not hours, but roughly how much time or effort it takes for a dev to complete a ticket. And in 2017, this is how much effort we spent on events. And in 2018, it dropped very dramatically. And what is crazy about this is this includes a lot of the development of this new system. So we're writing a portlet and creating all these things, but a lot of the requirement gathering is the thing that gives us all of this time. So you think that it's simple to like do the simple route, just build it, and then be able to repeat it. It's like, it's not difficult, but the amount of back and forth with marketing and all those times takes up a lot of dev resource time, where now if we just focus on a solution that empowers them to do that work, we are saving ourselves a ton of resources. And this is time that we can use to build pages, all the new pages that marketing wants to go live, improving other processes. So this is also very surprising because I would have expected it to be pretty similar the first year and then drop off the next year. But like we've saved already a ton of time just by switching to this. And the last one is consistency. So I didn't know how to change a snowflake into something that's more consistent, but a snowman looked cool. So we were able to give them sites that are, for the user experience, consistent, but still unique for what they need. And overall, they've been pleasantly surprised with them. Some of our European offices don't necessarily like some of the designs, and so we're now going back into the process of, instead of just fixing what they want, then we go back and change the component at the component level, at the design level. So hopefully next year we can get a design that they like. But the amount of time and effort that we've saved and the ease of it is it's been super helpful for everyone involved. So, and it makes me feel better when all these things are consistent and the buttons are the same across all of the sites. And if I fix something on the Symposium site, it's going to be fixed on all the other sites. You don't have to copy over your code. It saves there's a lot of benefits both for the dev side and for the user side. So the last little section is just a few of the lessons learned, which as I wrote these and then I realize that we're still growing in a lot of them, even this event, seeing how our team works. You'll see what I mean. So in flexibility is the first one. And what I mean by flexibility is both being able to adapt to changing requirements, but also writing code that is able to adapt. So the main way I've seen this is in our events app, we have this kind of section of like extra settings, which usually isn't the best practice to do, to have kind of like just an extra little thing that you can use for configurations later, but it saved us many, many times because everything in events is very like time sensitive. And so what the extra settings does is basically it allows us as developers to like just do a key value pair, and then the mobile app can read that. We expose it to the APIs. So an example of how we use this even is we can use it for certain events don't want certain pages maybe, or they don't want certain things to show in their app. So instead of us needing to go, maybe it's like 2 days before the event, and they decide we don't want this screen to show on the app. We have no way of like changing the code, testing all of it, committing it, submitting it to the app stores to get reviewed, all those things. There's just not enough time for all of that. But we can do something like change the API in this custom code and allow us to add a new setting. They can read that setting, and then it can make the change for us. So we've given ourselves little windows of pieces of our code that allow us to adapt to changing requirements. And that's been very helpful. Also, knowing when to push back against changes and when to keep them, learning to pivot well and be flexible has been, and at even a code level, has been very helpful. Second thing was testing. Testing is important and hard, and you know all those things, but then as you create new things, it's even harder in new areas. We faced a lot of interesting mobile testing. I think we could have done better at this and planning for this. So we had like testing phases in our mobile app. They had a special version of the mobile app that we could test. But figuring out how to not just test the product of the mobile app, but be able to test the sites before they go live. So we have the mobile app that's tested and great, but then when a marketer creates a site, they want to see what it looks like. And we don't want it to go live to everybody, but we want to be able to see it. So you need to build in things into your system that allow you to test even like a draft of your site, or a draft of your notifications so they can see what the notifications look like. So taking the time to think of testing completely and not just, is this product ready to go live, but as the marketers are building things, are they going to be able to test what they see and do those? And if you're using out-of-box Liferay, you can do things like that with staging, but as you create custom apps, you have to remember to build those things in. And lastly is just communication. Communication is always difficult and always crucial, especially when we're communicating across time zones, across departments, across technical expertise. Learning how to clearly have requirements that we need and understand them, that we know what marketing wants, and that is documented. One of the best things for this was just regular meetings. We would have meetings with marketing, dev, and mobile app every week or every other week, depending on how much stuff we were doing. And just that check-in, even if it was short, is helpful to continue to communicate, continue to figure out, because otherwise things get missed. And as requirements change or expectations change, we're not ready to pivot as we need. So that is all I have. We have a few minutes for questions. Do you guys have any questions with the process? Yeah?
Did you say your team built the portlet?
Yes, our team built the portlet. So we have a couple of back-end resources, mainly front-end, but our team built the theme, they built the portlet, and then we interfaced with the other team for the mobile app.
How much time into that portlet?
Yeah, approximately. I think it probably took us, once we started building it, it wasn't too difficult. It's like more getting the requirements of everything that is needed. But it probably took us a couple months to get, it's hard to say. Like actually just building the portlet, if you have everything, doesn't take super long, maybe 2 or 3 sprints, so a month and a half or so. But then there's always features that you add as you go. So it would be interesting actually to pull those numbers and see how much it took. But it isn't actually as long. As you can see, the app being built in that chunk on the graph was still smaller than all the maintenance that we did the year before. So, yeah. Yeah? Yeah, so the portlet just has APIs to expose everything. So then the mobile app will pull from the portlet. So they'll hit liferay.com, hit the endpoint that we need, and then they'll pull in the data. Does that answer your question? Yeah.